Welcome back to Tipping Point. I'm your host, Kara McKinney. Hypocrisy has become a hallmark of high-profile Democrat politicians, especially where climate policy is concerned. As they have with ignoring their own mask mandates and political protests, Democrats have adopted an okay for me but not for thee policy when it comes to carbon emissions. A classic case in point is Biden climate czar John Kerry, flying to Iceland on his private jet in 2019 to, get this, receive an award for his climate work. It's estimated private jets produce over 40 times more carbon per passenger than commercial flights. While he was campaigning, Kerry's boss Joe Biden vowed to make climate change a top priority of his administration. And he spent over $15 million on carbon-belching private jets to fly around spreading that message. And now, newly released campaign filings are revealing that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has spent over $500,000 on private jet travel since the year 2020. It's striking hypocrisy for a woman who has said climate activism to her is a religious thing. Of course, Pelosi also claims to be a devout Catholic, despite espousing policies in direct contradiction to Catholic teaching. So joining us now to discuss is biostatistician and founder of JunkScience.com, Steve Milloy. Thanks for being here tonight, Steve.
Hey, Kara, thanks for having me.
Great. So at this point, would you be more surprised to see reports that Pelosi was actually privately living out her supposed climate convictions?
Yeah, I know. She says climate is a moral issue to her. And if that's true, well, why did she rack up $500,000 worth of private jet expenses since 2020? And, this is really endemic to politicians in Washington and really all around the world that want us to, wear carbon hair shirts. You mentioned John Kerry. There's, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's not a Democrat, but he's almost as good as that. When he was governor of California, he used to commute daily from L.A. to Sacramento in his private jet. And then, most recently, he's going to be actually advertising electric vehicles in Super Bowl ads this year. Just 2 weeks ago, he ran over a Prius in his gigantic gas-guzzling GMC Yukon. Hypocrisy, goes hand in hand with climate. I don't even know where to stop. Leonard DiCaprio and his, yachts. Al Gore and his home that in Tennessee that uses 20 times as much electricity as the average home in Tennessee. Barack Obama talking about sea level rise and how his administration was going to stop the oceans from rising. Then he goes out and buys a mansion on Martha's Vineyard. The hypocrisy is just rampant.
It's almost as if they think that only they alone can responsibly use fossil fuels, but they think us unwashed masses, us plebs, that we're just too dirty. We don't know what we're doing. So we need to be treated like children, and those toys basically taken from us so that only they can use. But of course, that's kind of like that weird elitist mindset, I guess you could say, that they all have. And, when we close out 2021, many people are happy that Biden's Build Back Better plan, it kind of hit the ground. We saw we saw Cinema come out against it, breaking with Democrats on it. But does that mean that Biden, with his climate spending and other pieces of the Build Back Better plan, does that mean that those are squashed too, or are those going to keep coming back?
Oh, that's going to keep coming back as long as he's in office. There's a continuing resolution that's going to need to be passed in the coming weeks to keep the federal government funded. And Republicans are going to have to be on the watch for Build Back Better provisions that are slipped into that. And then, of course, Republicans are pushed into the corner. Well, you got to pass this or we're going to shut down the government. All these, Social Security checks won't go out. And Republicans always cave into that. So, no, it's not going away. And all these provisions are still as dangerous as ever. And everyone needs to be very vigilant about this.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but do those include billions in subsidies for wind and solar and everything else?
Oh, do they? So Build Back Better has like $555 billion worth of, green welfare, basically. I think $300 million in subsidies for wind, solar, and nuclear. And of course, those are even popular among Republican politicians. Just today, Joe Biden met with CEOs of the utility industry. Of course, they want subsidies for their utilities. He met earlier with CEOs from car companies, Ford, GM. Of course, they want subsidies for electric vehicles. Everybody wants subsidies to come out of the taxpayer, to lower prices for consumers. If we're going to have this stuff, we should just make consumers pay for it so consumers can feel the pain and vote accordingly.
And the worst part is, when it comes to fossil fuels, for all the flack that it gets, but really it comes straight from Mother Nature herself. I know there's a refining process and everything that goes into it, but it's a gift from God, really, the way that it works so efficiently and the way we can make it so cheaply and so affordably for so many people. Then you have the left, and of course they can't have that. They need to break what ain't broke, basically. So the first they have to break fossil fuels, and then they try and use that as the launching pad to go into their, green progressive future that they want for us. And it's just earlier this week, we had on a guest from the Heritage Foundation, and we're talking about the economy and specifically the Federal Reserve and how Biden has a new nominee for the Board of Governors for the federal bank, Sarah Bloom Raskin, and then how it ties back into climate change. It's so crazy because she wants the feds to somehow use their power to basically kneecap, even more so than has already been done, but American coal and gas and oil and everything else. Does it just seem like every agency, whether it be the Federal Reserve or even the military, the Pentagon, all getting their nose into this?
Well, yeah, at first, let's remember that fossil fuels are really stored solar power, nature's way of storing solar power. As to Sarah Bloom Raskin, if you're a leftist, no matter what job you have in the federal government, you've got to bring climate to it. And that's actually Joe Biden's commandment. So everybody, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, they're all supposed to be worried about climate. And so Sarah Bloom Raskin, she wants to bring it to the Fed. And the way she wants to do that, although she denied this in her confirmation hearing last week, she wants to make it more expensive for banks to lend to fossil fuel projects, to power plants, in hopes of forcing them off fossil fuels. These people are so smart yet so stupid at the same time. I mean, they're smart enough to get themselves into these positions, but not smart enough to realize that everything we do depends on fossil fuels. There's nothing that happens in our world without fossil fuels. And why we want to make it pointlessly more expensive, there's nothing the United States can do about climate. You can make energy as expensive as you want here. We're still going to use it. We're just going to make ourselves poorer, and we're going to have no effect on climate just because we're an ever-shrinking part of global emissions, even for those people who do believe, IPCC junk science.
And basically, in many ways, we're just giving a free present out to China and some of these other geopolitical rivals and competitors who don't have our best interests at heart. We're basically saying, oh, here, we're going to give you some freebies, some free giveaways, while we basically cannibalize ourselves from the inside. But, Steve, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
When we come back after the break, is a